Good evening, everybody. You're watching a special Monday pregame edition of the African American Athlete. I'm Rick Hampton, along with my co-host and frat brother, Michael Roberson, coming to you on a Monday. Mike, we decided we'd come on a little earlier tonight, man. We're going to be joined in a couple of minutes by the ABA and NBA legend, Matt Calvin. He's going to set us up for Game 5 of the NBA Finals. But just to hit that a little bit, man, before Matt gets here, it's just kind of, you know. And we were talking off air, and I think you're absolutely right. It's going to be interesting to see the ratings because it just hadn't been a lot of star power, although nothing against Joker, a great player.
Right.
But it just hadn't been a good matchup.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that, for the Eastern Conference, of course, you love that Cinderella story with Miami, the 8th seed, and they came all the way back. They knocked off the powerful Bucks. They knocked off Boston. But it looked like both of those teams were we don't want to use the word failure for Giannis's team, but but they basically were flawed. I mean, and someone tried to bring up, remember when Detroit beat LA? I said, yeah, but you guys keep forgetting that team was flawed. You had Kobe with all his stuff going on, and you had Gary Payton didn't like the triangle, and Karl Malone was injured and came back, and he was also allegedly, I guess, trying to mess with Kobe's wife. I don't know. But, yeah, it was a lot of stuff going on with that team. Even though they were star-studded, they were flawed. So when they try to use that analogy, Detroit did it without any real stars, and, that was one of the best scenarios. But, in this situation, people are going to kind of tag Denver by saying, hey, you guys be an A seed, another A seed, a 7 seed, and a 4 seed. So they're going to say, your path to the championship wasn't that dramatic. So that's what some people are saying about Denver. And, of course, Miami, they're saying, you know what? It finally caught up with you guys. You guys just barely made it into the playoffs. Now, you're reaping what you sowed.
But that's why you just play, man, because you never know. Yeah. Hey, it's not. I think they got to break against Milwaukee, not having Giannis for 2 games. And Milwaukee still should have beat them.
I know.
Gave 1 game away. I don't know. What was that game?
They gave about 2 of them away. That last one, they were up big. They were up big several times.
Yeah, they blew some big leads. And I think it was game 3 where they let Butler get a layup at the buzzer. I mean, with maybe a second or so on the shot clock. But Denver, hey, they can't help who they play. They played them and beat them. I mean,
but I think a lot of people are getting upset because they're already saying Joker's a top 10 player. I'm like, what? Oh yeah, if he wins this, I heard
top 10 all time.
Yes, I heard our frat brother Chris Broussard say, "I'll move him past Patrick Ewing if he wins this." I'm like, will you guys stop disrespecting these players back in the day? They just didn't happen. I mean, Patrick should have had a championship in '94, along with the late Anthony Mason.
Well, but not only that, let's give Joker some time, too.
That's what I'm saying. But that's where a lot of people are getting frustrated. It's like, dude, you guys are doing too much. Well, he should have won 3 in a row. Only Larry Bird, the last one, did that. Or, it's like, can we stop? I mean, the hyperbole is getting ridiculous. I mean, yeah, he's playing tremendous basketball, but, people are too much of the moment. It's like all about prisoners of the moment. Like, okay, well, because last year they're talking about how great, where's Steph now? Steph's ahead of Magic Johnson. I'm like, you guys have lost your mind. Okay? I mean, Stop it.
But you know what, though? Some of these guys have been gone so long that, a lot of these kids, man, they hadn't watched enough YouTube.
But I was having a discussion with somebody where they were doing that, and I said, "Oh, you know what? No, actually, I wrote a email to Gilbert Arenas because he's sitting there trash in the '80s, saying, "Oh man, that wasn't good basketball. Those guys weren't that good." I said, "Dude," first of all, you got to realize there was only 23 teams in the '80s, so that meant that you had more players, good players on teams." I said, you keep forgetting that by the time Michael started winning, the league was watered down. You had players in there that had no business in the league. So stop thinking that because we're in the future that everybody's just developed into better players. It's not better players. It's just that, they're more skilled. I can't really say they're more skilled. I mean, because they watch videos of and one where they could do all the behind the back and all that. I mean, that still not mean that you're a great player. I mean, everybody wants to emulate Kyrie. I mean, that doesn't make you a great player. You still got to be able to do the fundamentals. So,
absolutely right.
Go
ahead, Mike.
Well, that'd be like, and I was saying it to the email with Gilbert. I don't know if you ever saw it. I said, you know what? That'd be like me diminishing what Oscar, not Oscar, because I saw part of Oscar, but even the early days of Oscar, Wilt, and Bill Russell, because I didn't see them play in the 60s. So what kind of fraud would I be to just diminish what they did? Because, hey, man, I didn't see them. So, and, the players always get better. So I would say Jokic is better than Bill Russell. Come on.
Hey, if you want to think if you want to think Bill Russell, those guys weren't an athlete, there's a YouTube clip of Bill Russell jumping over somebody.
I know, and he was a world-class long jumper
at 16,
and high jumper, what was world-class, right? That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's when they used to say Russell Westbrook is the best athletic, the most athletic point guard ever. And I said, okay, if we want to even keep it present, he's no better athlete than Nate Robinson. Nate Robinson was a Division I football player. He was an excellent hurdler in high school. He definitely played basketball too. And it's like, you guys got to stop just saying because you see somebody run fast and dunk that they're a great athlete. I mean, even with Iverson was a all-world quarterback in high school.
Hey, do you remember this guy? You probably might be a little young, Mike, but this guy, Randy Smith, was a point guard for the Buffalo Braves.
I said the Clippers, but the Braves.
Yeah. That dude was a freaking bullet.
Ricky Green
was a freaking man.
Well, I got one for you. In college, Prince Bridges. That guy could jump through the roof. Yes, that guy is from Missouri. He was he might have had a son that's playing, but Prince Bridges. Prince Bridges from Missouri.
I don't remember him.
Man,
it's a ton of them.
David Thompson, even on Denver.
Oh my!
I had somebody say, Jokic is the best. If he wins, he'd be the best Denver Nugget ever. He already is. I said, you guys forget Alex English and David Thompson. Alex English won multiple scoring titles. He had the most points in the 80s.
Yeah,
Alex English. We need to stop with the disrespect. It's just ridiculous.
Dan Issel, who played.
Well, that's what they were trying to compare. They're trying to say he will overtake Dan Issel. I'm like, did you guys forget that the guys that made them famous was David Thompson and Alex English and Kiki Vandeweghe.
But those are beauty contests. We're gonna get into the finals with our good buddy Matt Calvin,
former Nugget,
former Denver Nugget.
Also Spencer Haywood. Spencer Haywood was when they were the Denver Rockets, I believe. But he has a connection. So two of our guests have connections with the Nuggets.
I want to play this little clip for you, Mike.
All right.
Turns tonight after WNBA star Brittany Griner and her teammates were allegedly harassed by someone at DFW Airport. This happened today. Phoenix Mercury forward Brianna Turner tweeting that someone was following the team with cameras at the airport, apparently saying wild remarks, causing the team to huddle in a corner. Ms. Griner and her Mercury teammates were in town for a couple of games against the Dallas Wings. These were Griner's first games in her home state since she was released from that Russian prison last December. The WNBA says they are looking into this incident and remain committed to security for players.
Just utterly ridiculous.
And it's weird because I was just in DFW during the Final Four. So, wow.
Just, what the young lady has gone through the last year to come back and have to deal with something like this. But I'm interested to see, as you saw that the WNBA said it's going to beef up its security. Let me ask that.
Security concerns tonight, committed to security.
As we gather additional information about today's incident, this was over the weekend at the Dallas airport. It's come to our attention that it was orchestrated by a social media figure and a provocateur. His actions were inappropriate and unfortunate. Yeah.
Another one of these internet bullies.
Yeah. I mean, Mike, is this where we are? I mean, clearly this is where we are for some people in this country, and especially considering what Brittany has gone through over the last year.
Right. But, to be honest, though, I don't think she thought it would be at this extent, but you had to expect there's going to be some naysayers because they're going to say, oh, yeah, our government had to get involved and you don't deserve it. And, especially with the connection to supposedly some remnants of marijuana or weed or some type of drug. And, there's going to be some people that say, well, you didn't deserve that. We had real POWs that we should have been trying to free instead of you, just some, tall basketball player with a lifestyle we may not care about. So there's going to be, you're going to get that backlash. I mean, but like I said, to be at this extent, and even though it's expected, it's still not, accepted.
Now you cover a lot of women's athletics on the collegiate level and professional. You do
Right.
professional tennis. Do you think they are getting the respect? Number one, from fans across America. Number two, on the business side of it.
Well, I mean,
And I know it's hard to put them all in one little bag.
No, I'm saying that, you have these situations where, like, and also don't forget soccer too. Like I covered Team USA, the women's soccer team, and they played here in San Jose. It was an international friendly or something like that. And I talked to the women's coach about just the whole thing about women's soccer is our champion team, whereas the men's team is mediocre at best, but they get more money and they get all the backing and all that. And I said, how can you explain how we could get this homegrown talent from the women and be successful, but the men, you just don't get that many results. And then this is the melting pot. So we should have the best of everybody, people from South America, people from Europe and all that come here to the United States because it's the land of milk and honey. Well, she said, I don't want to, make it seem like I'm down in the team, but she said a lot of the guys prefer other sports like football, baseball, and all that instead of soccer. Whereas women, they don't have as many choices, so a lot of them gravitate towards soccer. And then it helped with that Brittany Griner, Brittany, the one that took her shirt off. So when she did that moment, and when the World Cup was going on, that opened up a lot for the women, and they've been great since. But what happens is you get a situation like Serena and Venus, basically just blowing up tennis. And then Venus actually fought for equal pay. They said, look, we get more popular than the men are now, especially the American men. So we should be getting as much. But then the pushback was, well, they play 5 sets and you guys only play 3. So they have to work harder, so they should get paid more. So they went back and forth with that. Then finally they said, hey, it was going to be equal pay. So you would think that Serena would get credit, or I'm sorry, Venus would get credit for it. But once again, they say, oh, well, because of pioneers like Billie Jean King and others. So there's always that moment too, where if it's a black dominated sport, men or women, sometimes they don't really care for it as much. So you'll get that kind of stuff. Whereas the women's soccer team, that's mostly white women. So they're kind of like behind them,
And,
you know.
and you're right, especially for soccer, they're going to really get the athletes because, women don't have football to draw those athletes away, so they can focus right in on tennis. I think we're going to have our guest Matt Calvin in just a second.
All right.
And saw him for a moment. Hey, Mike, before Matt comes on, there's been some talk about a woman coaching a NBA team, but you cover one of the greatest coaches in college basketball, Tara Vanderbilt. You can't tell me she's not good enough to coach a college men's team if that's something she wants to do.
Right. Well, exactly. But, it all comes down to whether guys respect them. Will they say, look, you know what? I respect what you've done. You're the winningest coach and all that. That would be the main thing. If she could garner their respect, and then it could work. I mean, let's also not forget Dawn Staley. I've had a chance to cover her too. I think Dawn would be excellent in that. And then, of course, we have our other former players that are coaching in the NBA as assistants. So I would think that they might have the upper hand on, possibly getting that NBA job or getting a job at one of the Power 5 schools for men. So it could happen. I don't know if Tara would have the patience for that. I mean, she's been at it for a while, and she probably would say, you know what? I don't need anything to prove in that. I'm doing this in this sport. I love it. Because she's always upping, saying, look, women's basketball needs more attention, especially women's basketball on the West Coast, because you get a lot of people out here who feel that, it's the East Coast bias and nobody cares about stuff on here. Everybody's asleep by the time the games are finished out here. So as much as she champions women's basketball and women's West Coast basketball, I don't think that would be anything that she would entertain. Yeah. But I can see Staley doing it, though.
Yeah, I can too. I really can, because she looked like somebody that would get in your face.
Oh yeah, she's from Philly. It's like we had Michael on from Philly, So it's a different kind of group of people.
Yeah.
Brotherly love. But and also before we get to Mac, we have to acknowledge that it might be another historic moment. The Aces. Well, that's the women's basketball. But the Golden Knights in hockey, they might bring a championship to Las Vegas. So the city we talked about before that was against gambling and all that, they may have multiple champions there. And now there's some pushback on if the A's will actually go down there for them to have Major League Baseball. And, of course, there's been rumors that by the time LeBron retires, he might be a part of a group buying a basketball team, or becoming the owner of a basketball team that may be in Vegas. So we might see a lot of changes in Vegas over the next few years, where we could call it a legitimate major league city if they have all four sports, and also soccer is also important.
Well, hey, speaking of odds, as we are joined by the legendary Matt Calvin, before we get to Matt, speaking of odds, since they're going to Vegas, you said it's pushback on the A's. What are the chances of them staying?
Well, I think they're going to have a big rally out here to try to, get them back. I guess because they saw that Vegas really didn't have things set up or how it's going to be paid for and all that, even though they had plans for a stadium, that there may be still an opening for the A's to stay here. But they're going to have a big rally to try to, get the people excited and say, hey, we can still keep them here. But, it's kind of like a weird dichotomy, because if you guys seen highlights when they showed the A's, there's like 5 people in the stands. So a lot of people won't be able to ever get over that. And it's almost like, okay, if we bring this team back, are you guys still going to fill up the stadium every time? So you have that. It's like, will it be apathy still if they do stay, or will it be one of those situations where if Vegas can't do it, we got to find another suitor? So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, they're supposed to have a big rally to try to keep them here.
Hey, well, we want to welcome Matt Calvin in, the legendary one. Matt, you're a former Denver player. You got to be feeling a little pride watching the Nuggets do their thing. You were there they were still the Rockets when you played there, right?
Hey guys, it's good to see you. Happy to be on with you, Ricky and Mike. And it's an exciting day tonight for the Denver Nuggets. I think they'll close it out tonight. But per your statement, Ricky, I was not. I came in when we first named it to the Denver Nuggets.
Okay.
And the reason for that was that they thought it was going to be a merger, and they couldn't have two Rocket teams because the Houston Rockets was already in Houston after moving from San Diego. So it was my first year with the Denver Nuggets, and surprisingly, no one knows this, but I made the first basket and the first assist as a Denver Nugget in the Nugget uniform.
Nice.
Oh my goodness! I did not know that. That is amazing. Hey, Matt, is the altitude real?
It really is. If you haven't been in Denver for a couple of days, it will really affect your lungs. But after a couple of days, you get adjusted to it. But I used to tell the joke about before the NBA, before the merger, when I played for the Denver Nuggets, most teams would request an oxygen tank so they can breathe in, get some air. And I told our trainer to hide the oxygen tank, so we wouldn't give it to the visiting team so the players could breathe, And now it's mandated that you have to have an apparatus or a breathing tank apparatus for the players to breathe in. But your lungs burn, Ricky and Mike. Your lungs really burn.
Wow. But it really wouldn't matter where Denver played Miami. This is just, it's not a fair fight, Matt.
No, it isn't. And I think I've shared with you all year long that I've been pulling for the Denver Nuggets. I just thought they had so much talent and they had the best player in the league, except for this year. Obviously, Embiid won the MVP, but I just thought they had so much talent. And what they did, Ricky and Mike, was that they added two outstanding players that one of them have really showed up in the playoff, and that's, Brown. And he's played tremendously. So they added, the weaknesses was that they could not defend on the wing. So they added two wing players to their roster, and that was Pope and Bruce Brown. And they've done a tremendous job, those two guys, in bringing that depth. And then if you also look at their team, they have a veteran, a bench. They acquired Thomas Bryant from the Lakers, and they picked up DeAndre Jordan, Ish Smith, and then they picked up Green, Jeff Green.
Reggie Jackson.
All veteran players that kept the locker room quiet and without a lot of craziness, and they work with the young players. If you look at that team, and they picked up Reggie Jackson as well. So when you look at that team, they got the nucleus of their players are Porter Smith, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon. All those young kids are in their 20s. And the same with Jamal Murray, who's only 27 years old. And they got Joker, who's only 26. So they got a veteran team that keeps them together. And they got some great young players with good character and great integrity. And they play together as a team. So that's a hard formula to beat, in my opinion.
All right. So Mac, let's look at it this way. So if they win, do you think there would be any type of letdown where it's like, okay, we finally reached the mountaintop, no pun intended. We finally reached the mountaintop, and then they get relaxed and kind of do like a lot of teams do, don't make it back to the finals, right away. It's like they have a little malaise. So are you worried about that with this team, or do you think that they have enough leadership that they could be viable again next year?
Mike, I think you always have to be concerned with a young team,
Yeah.
But to my knowledge, they don't have any contractual problems coming up with their star players, with Joker as with Jamal Murray. They don't have any contractual problems. Usually those teams that can't develop some chemistry or dynasty,
Yeah.
they have contractual problems. If you look at the Golden State Warriors, they had a young team. They didn't have contractual problems where players are walking out, going somewhere else. They want to get a better contract, more money, which you can't blame them. But I think this is a young team that's built on around Joker and around Murray, and I think they're here for. I see 3 or 4 more championships in them over the next 7, 8 years. It's tough to win in this league.
Right.
And as you well know.
All right. Well, I had another quick question. So, of course, Joker's getting a lot of accolades now because, people are throwing him up there and saying, well, he's up there with the greatest centers of all time and things like that. So they even went to, he will surpass Isso as the greatest Nugget of all time. And I said, you guys forget David Thompson and Alex English. So what is your opinion on that about his hierarchy as a Denver player? Is he
I think no question he's the greatest Denver player of all times. From what he's accomplished in his 4, 5, 6 years of all times.
Okay.
You got to realize David Thompson only played in Denver for 3 years. The first year, I was traded to Virginia for the rights to David Thompson. So David played in the 75, 76 season, 76, 77 season. And then I think David had some problems off the court. Yeah. And I think they traded him the 78, 79 season to Seattle. So, and Dan Issel was just a great scorer. There's no comparison. I think that the Joker is probably one of the top 5, 6 all-time great centers in the NBA. For what he brings, there's not another player in the NBA that has so many triple doubles, triple doubles, yeah. like the Joker.
I mean, and you saying this all because Mike and I were thinking he is no doubt a great player, but isn't it a little young in his career to put him there? But you feel comfortable doing that?
Well, he's exceeded a lot of players, probably more than not even Wilt Chamberlain has back-to-back MVP years. Wilt Chamberlain, I think, to my knowledge, only have had 2 or 3 triple doubles in his whole playoff career. So this kid's had 10, 11 just this year alone. So that pushed him up with it. Now I know this is a different style of play, the pick and roll, the 3-point shot. He's a tremendous passer, a great scorer. He's not as athletic as some of those other players, but you look at what this kid brings to the team, I think it's amazing. And he has a great attitude, which you like in a young player. He's 26, 27. Now you hope that he doesn't change with the accolades and the success that he's going to have as well as the team's going to have. But for right now, he's probably one of my top 5 all-time great centers.
All right. Now, what about, to keep it Denver, what about Alex English and Carmelo?
Well, Carmelo was a great scorer, but Carmelo couldn't get him to the finals. Got him to the NBA finals once, but you have to look at what is his value to a team. And there's no question that Joker value to this team and getting them to the NBA finals. This team was right on the edge for a couple of years. They just needed to add 2 players that I talked about, Brown and Pope. But they're right there. Alex English was a great scorer. But Alex English did not get his team to the NBA finals or semifinals. And, and that was during my era as well. These guys are a little younger than me, but I remember the Alex English. I played with Dan Issel. And, of course, we talked about the great David Thompson, was a great player for 3 or 4 years. And David, I think, only played 6 or 7 years total of professional basketball because he had a lot of off-the-court issues. But there's no question in the little time that Joker has reached the top, Mount Rushmore, that he's one of the great centers of all time, not only the greatest player for the Denver Nuggets history, but also in the NBA.
Our friend Jared Wiley checks in and says he kind of agrees with you, Mac, and those other players didn't get the Nuggets a championship. Hey, Miami got them once. I give Miami a lot of credit for even being here. Is it any kind of way they can extend this series tonight?
Well,
Shoot the lights out
that team has the heart of a lion, heart of a champion. They exemplify the heart and championship culture that Pat Riley has built there for 20 plus years. And I think it's going to be a battle, but I think the factors that is just overwhelming is that Denver's playing at home and they've outplayed the Miami Heat in all four of those games, except for the fourth quarter of game number 2. I think it was
Right. Game
2.
Yep.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
But I just, it's been a great series, and guys, a lot of people don't talk about it, and I've shared this with a couple other, but I've been involved with 2 teams that are now in the NBA. When I played in the ABA with the Miami Floridians, we pretty much fertilized the grounds for the Miami Heat, for NBA basketball to come to Miami. And then, of course, that was my first year in Denver when they named it the Denver Nuggets. That was my first year, 74-75, where we won 65 ball games, lost 19. And in those days, you played 84 ball games. So I'm very proud of the fact that I've been a part of 2 great cities. And I remember playing there where, 7,200 people was the max. It was the capacity at the old convention center. You couldn't get a ticket. And it's the same way now. And Denver is a great sports town with the Broncos as well as the Nuggets now.
And they got the Rockies now. So.
And the baseball team is
Avalanche won last year.
And the Avalanche is there. Yeah, so it's a great sports town. Yeah. And the people love their sports. They really support the Nuggets as well as the Broncos.
Mac, I have a question for that. So how did you see those cities change? Those 4 cities. Well, it's hard to say with the Nets, but those 4 cities change after they merged into the NBA. So how did Denver change when it became an NBA team? How did Indianapolis change when they became an NBA team? How did let me see. The Nets were in New York, but remember how they went over to New Jersey for a minute. And then who am I missing? Oh, San Antonio. How did those cities change when they became an NBA team? Did everything upgrade?
Well, I think the only thing to upgrade was the ticket price and and more exposure. Here again, pro basketball was in Denver in 1967 when the first start of the Denver Rockets and the ABA.
Right.
So they were around 9 years before the merger. And so there was already an established culture there. And I mean, we did not have losing franchises during that period of time. And then you bring in the NBA with the marketing tools and David Stern, and for Denver to see other great star players coming to the city, made a big difference. And then I'll also say, guys, that Denver is not like Los Angeles or New York, where you have the stars to come out and watch you play. That was not a culture there for that. They just enjoyed coming and seeing a great product. And I think you see that now. And again, it's going to be around for the next 5-6 more years, in my opinion. And the Avalanche, it's the same thing. I was around during the 80s after I retired when the Avalanche came about. Denver's not a hockey city, but there were so many people that have moved to Denver from hockey cities that just really fell in love with hockey, and the same way with baseball. And of course, the Broncos was always the hit there. It was always the main show, if you will. And I think now it's a great sports town, very supportive, and as you well know, all the marketing that goes on to make these teams and these various sports franchises successful is the marketing and having star players.
Mac mentioned those ABA ticket prices. When I was in school at Richmond, we go down to the Richmond Coliseum. Tickets $5, man.
Yeah,
you sit right there on the bench for $5. Now getting that $5 was
Yeah, it was $5. Yeah, during
Yeah.
that time. But
That was
you asked me
profit
about. I think
sometimes.
Ricky, you asked if Miami has a chance tonight. They have played hard all series, but if you look at what's going on now, the last couple games, their key players, Struess and Vincent, they've kind of fallen back to the
Yeah,
level. They're really role players, and
right,
you're trying to put role players in a star's position, and they're just not capable
right,
of having that type of performance night in and night out. And you can't forget, guys, there
Right.
are 8 seed, so there's something about
Yep.
being an 8 seed. But I think they've overachieved to the
Yep.
highest level. But I think tonight, as they say on TNT, I think they're going fishing tomorrow.
right. And Mac, I was talking to a buddy today who's a Miami fan. I'm like, dude, you ought to be happy.
Right.
You were a freaking AC. And Mike, and they lost their playing game, the first playing game,
Right.
and they made
And
it.
was down to the Bulls in
And
the second one.
Exactly,
they
Mike.
lost to the finals. So
Right.
I mean, you know, y'all had a great run, man. This team is just
Well,
better.
you know what it's similar to, Ricky and Mac, back when the Knicks were the AC, when they knocked off the number 1 seed Miami, and they end up in the finals, but that was during the lockout season. So that was like, it was like a truncated season because the 98 portion, they were doing the lockout, and then they said, okay, we're going to come back and play like 50 games. And then the Knicks upset Miami, number 1 Miami, and with Allen Houston shot, our frat brother, Allen Houston shot, and then that team also has Spreewell. So
And
they
they
made
went
it
on
to
to
the
play
finals against San Antonio.
They play San Antonio.
Yeah. So it's kind of similar. What's going on now is that, that was a great achievement in itself. And, that was that was the time they made it to the finals when you thought that 94 team was going to win it in the finals. But,
Right.
Hey, Mac, we're going to do a little shorter show tonight, but some other news I want to get to. Chris Paul leaving. It looks like he's out in Phoenix. Your thoughts about Chris and who should be looking at him?
Well, as I was talking to my daughter today, that I think is really disappointing. For me, it sends a real negative message to the NBA and its business when you have to waive a Chris Paul to save $15 million. Not only what he's meant to the Phoenix Suns, but also what he's meant to the NBA as a whole. And they brought in a new owner who's looking to cut corners, save monies, and it's really, for me personally, if he has been waived, it's a sad day in the NBA. Now Chris was land on his feet. He will probably end up with the Lakers or a contending team. He'll have his choice. Now he'll get paid. He has a $30 million contract with only $15 million guarantee. So the Suns will save $15 million, and they'll stay under the luxury cap a little bit. And they're hoping to bring another player in there. But obviously Chris is 37, 38. He doesn't have. Um, he has a propensity to get injured every year. Seem like in the playoffs, but then he also is not able to play and capable of playing 60, 70 games a year. And so I understand that from a business perspective, but I think from a human standpoint, I just don't think you waive one of the top 2 or 3 all-time great point guards and top 25 great players in the NBA. I just think it's not. I don't think it's right.
Along with letting the coach go.
Well, yeah, Monty was dead man walking.
Yeah.
He was really knocking on the door. When you get into it with one of your top 2 or 3 players in Aiton, it was a matter of time. And I just think Monty brought a lot of that on his own, but we know that for a fact. We don't know the other factors that went on in that locker room, but we do know that he did not get along. And then when you lose in 2 consecutive years in the 7th game by 30 points, in the playoffs, I mean, that's doomsday knocking at the door.
Yeah, and Darko Rajovic is now in Toronto. Your thoughts on his hiring? Longtime assistant, been around a while.
Well, I think,
What do you think?
I think, I think, uh, 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 I think, uh
Well, I'm happy the fact that they gave an assistant coach who's been around a long time an opportunity. But I mean, that's one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the Western Conference. So why not hire a Doc Rivers? I heard Doc, but you're talking about the Phoenix Suns, right?
No, Toronto.
No, Toronto.
Oh, Toronto. Well, that's really disappointing because Adrian Griffin had been there during the championship years, also been the top assistant coach, well thought of, and why not hire him?
He's in Milwaukee.
Yeah, he went to Milwaukee, but
The
they had a
Valley
chance
of
to
Gold.
hire him
Oh, I see what you're saying, but
after firing Nurse. That opportunity in Milwaukee would not have been open for him.
okay, I got you.
And when they fired Nurse,
Yeah,
they basically should have hired Griffin right at the beginning. They should not. He's not gone through an interview. They should have hired him.
well, maybe they think that the whole system was ruined with Nurse and his assistants. Did they keep any assistants?
Well, yeah, I just think, and what's disappointing when I see that, you have a black general manager not giving another African American assistant coach an opportunity.
Yeah.
That's what's disappointing to me, guys.
Well, I have a question for you, Mac. Being that you were this vulnerable point guard, do you ever interact with people like Chris Paul? And do they know your background?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
yeah, absolutely. I'll see those guys at the All-Star game or in Las Vegas when we go to watch the summer league. Yeah,
okay,
yeah. And I knew Chris Paul when I was living in New Orleans. So, it's just sad to see how he's going to end his career on this note, being injured, not really having an opportunity to play for a championship. And I thought he had a chance a couple years ago. You remember when they got to the finals?
not only then, 18 when they were up 3-2 on Golden State, they were about to go to the finals. Then he pulled the hamstring. So
Right.
he's had some bad breaks.
He's had some bad luck. Yeah.
Yeah, bad luck. Yeah.
Hey, Matt, before we go, Wembanyama, the number 1 pick, he's going to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. His team played in the foreign league playoffs, got blown out. He only had 8 points, a really poor showing against Monaco. Should San Antonio be concerned, or is this just guys have bad games?
I think it's a bad game he had, but he's a consensus number 1 player to be drafted. My gosh, the guy's 7'3", 7'4", with the 8-foot wingspan. And then he's going to have the luxury to have Tim Duncan and David Robinson around to tutor him during camp and throughout the year. So I think it's a great pick. I mean, that's a no-brainer. I think when you go from there, people talking about the young kid Miller from Alabama. They're talking about who's 6'8", all-around player. Then you're talking about the kid I really like is Anthony Bonner, I think it is, from Duke. I've looked at him. I really like him. He's 6'11", 7 feet, very athletic. He's only a freshman out of Duke. I like him. And, the other kid you talk about is the kid played in the elite league. I like him, but I'll take size and athleticism over a smaller player anytime.
Well, let me ask you this question, Mac. You think the team that drafts Miller is going to have to worry about backlash?
That'd be my concern, Mike. I think when you have a kid that was involved in a killing, like Miller was, who brought the gun to the scene for those 2 individuals, to the young kid Miles, who also was a player, to shoot and kill the young lady, even though it was accidental. They were shooting at the guy, but she ended up getting shot. I think you have a problem when you bring that type of player onto your team. And so they're basically betting on his athleticism and his ability to score and all-around player. I just think you have an off-the-court problem with fans and, so I'm sure they've vetted this young kid. But again, that's still a negative. It's a stigma there. The fact that he was involved in a murder.
Right. Yeah. And it brings me back to the days, probably early 80s when Quentin Daly was out here at USF, but he got drafted by the Bulls. And he had an alleged incident with some nerds or something out here. And they were protesting out in front of the Bulls facilities and everything back in Chicago. So I remember being in either junior high or whatever when that happened. And it was amazing.
And you also have what's going on now, the John Morant. So
Yeah.
I mean, you know, with the gun incident.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of teams are going to really be skeptical of who they bring in. Character matters a great deal. I don't think anybody would have seen this from John Morant early on.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just that he could not get away from some of the young guys that he grew up with, and he still stayed in that culture, that negative, negative culture.
Even the rapper Cameron was saying, dude, wise up. You don't want to be a rapper? Go play basketball.
Right.
I'm like, dude, come on, man, chill out. Hey,
I remember a quote from Martin Luther King that says that when you elevate yourself in life, everybody can't go with you who was down there with you.
There you go.
You know, so a lot of these guys grew up with a lot of their peers, and they don't want to leave them. You know, they don't realize they're now at a professional level, and you got to leave those guys. And that's what John Morant, the guy he continues to get in trouble with, is one of his best friends. They grew up together in ever since the 5th or 6th grade. And but you know, not only the gun incident, guys, but just the negatives that went on, and using the N word and demeaning people. That really troubled me.
Yeah. And Mac, you were a star in the ABA and the NBA. When you went home, you saw your boys from the hood. Was it high and by? Or?
Oh, I did. You know, there's a couple of guys that, and you know, the level of what I did, I got a couple of them tryouts with me when I was down in Miami. But all the guys that I hung out with, they were all good guys, and they were good ball players. But I tried to help them as much as I could, but I didn't hang out with them. I never. That was never my mentality. You got to remember, I was married at 21 years of age, 2021, and I had a family and had a daughter when I was 24. So I had that the cohesive family structure where, you know, I didn't go out, even on the road. I didn't go out, and like a lot of players that went out to clubs when they couldn't wait to get on the road. So you go out and you're involved in that negative element, you're going to get caught up in it. And I think that's what a lot of these kids, certainly John Morant, but he's going to get suspended. It would be my guess to be 45, 50 games. If this was his first time, which they gave him a little grace, he was suspended, 8 games, 10 games?
8
and now the second incident, it's going to be 40 plus games. And that's without pay. And I don't know if he's a guy. I mean, he's already lost $40 million because he didn't make one of the top 3 teams, all-pro team. So it's pretty sad, but I just hope the kid gets some help and probably start with his father, T. Morant.
Yeah.
Well, well, let me just say this, Ricky. What's funny is that they had a video out of him, and he was at a restaurant or a bar or something like that, and some young lady was like talking to him, but she didn't realize that was John Morant. And then I think he either paid it. No, it was a waitress, and I think
he gave her $5,000.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so you had that out there, and everybody said, "Man, what a good guy!" And look how quickly things changed.
Right.
So it's
environment.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna get out of here, Mac. We'll have you back because we got the NBA draft
finals
coming up.
Oh, okay.
NBA draft coming up, and Denver probably ends this tonight, so we'll talk about it next time. For Michael Roberson, the great Matt Calvin, I'm Rickey Hampton. Peace, everybody. Enjoy the game.
Thanks for having me on, guys.